How the Germanic word for soap reached Aboriginal Australia. Wait, what? This must have blown those first colonists' minds. Imagine sailing halfway across the world to find out that people still use basically the same word for soap. So in Germany, it's this word. Well, actually, it's this.
Seife.
But back in the day, it was the other one. This is an old Germanic word, which sounds really familiar.
Seipa.
It's kind of the same as the modern day word. Obviously, I'm speaking English, so we say so, but there's a divergence here because in the Frankish kingdom, as well as in Latin, they're very similar words. Moving down to ancient Greece, you can still recognize that original root word. As we enter into the Middle East, as well as Arabic, it becomes sabum, at least something similar to that. And the sea people will take it to Malaya from there as they cross the Indian Ocean and move through modern-day Indonesia to the northernmost points of the continent of Australia, Jabu. Kind of sounds like shampoo. I guess this word is not exactly that similar to the original German word, but it's actually crazy when studying languages how often this happens. Like maybe on the surface it doesn't look like there's any connection, but then you dig deeper and it's like you can literally map out the word evolution. This is what I was gonna say. It sounds very similar to jabón in Spanish. The vote by the South to secede from the rest of the Union. This is obviously right before the first and only U.S. Civil War would start. So in orange we have the counties for secession. Obviously that was the vote that would ultimately win here, starting the Civil War. In red we have against secession though. So large parts of northern Alabama as well as Georgia. In purple we have delegation divided. They ultimately couldn't come to a conclusion in these counties. And in green they had no return. So this part of Texas, a couple of counties in Arkansas. The most interesting part of this map though is West Virginia, which was of course at that time just Virginia. West Virginia ultimately got their independence in 1863, like 2 years after those votes. And this is why the people were very against secession. I just want to add, the U.S. Civil War ultimately had more Americans die in it than all the other wars. Of course, that was because it was Americans versus Americans. And I believe you can add up every single other war and it still wouldn't beat out Civil War casualties. This might have been the only true world tour done in history. This was done by Josh Stone, an English singer and songwriter. She expressed her intent to perform in every single country and began this journey in 2014. And she pretty much almost did, in fact. Greenland doesn't count because that's part of Denmark. French Guiana doesn't count because that's part of France. And she did hit all the European countries. There was only a few that she didn't. We've got Iran, Indonesia, and then of all places, the Philippines. I get Iran, like that is going to be difficult. But those other two, while the Philippines and Indonesia were not part of the tour, Josh Stone has performed in those countries on separate occasions. Oh, okay, so I guess it counts. Maybe she just didn't want to return, but so you could have filled those in. Those two just weren't played in between the years of 2014 and 2019. What's insane is apparently she played in North Korea. How did she do that? And then not Iran. The tour was supposed to end July 4th in, July 4th in 2019. However, she was deported from the country due to their restrictions on female singers leading public performances. Oh, jeez, Iran. I'm tempted we should just invade like an island that Iran controls for like 2 hours, have her perform like a song or two, and then just leave. Let's just complete this achievement. She somehow performed in a bar in North Korea to get that country to count. The fact that she's British makes the story like even more funny. A guide to the most and least dangerous national parks. Sometimes I forget that national parks can be dangerous. Not only considering wildlife, but obviously the landscapes themselves and also how rural they all are. I'm gonna say a lot of them have to be in Alaska. Oh, another issue is the strength of cell service. Oh, and then obviously temperatures. There's a lot of things. So one of the safest is actually the Missouri Gateway Arch, which I am now just learning that is considered a national park. They've never had any problems there, and that is because it is literally located in the middle of the city, kind of. I kind of want to go here and just be that one dude that does die. The second most safe national park is the Indiana Dunes. They have had problems, but not that bad comparatively. We've got Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, as well as the Petrified Forest in Arizona, this valley in Ohio, as well as the Channel Islands in California. Actually, I was just there. Does Catalina count as that? As for the most dangerous, in the 20th spot, we have Crater Lake in Oregon. Part of the problem is how many people visit versus how many casualties they've had. Sometimes, like, just not a lot of people visit the place. The Rocky Mountains in Colorado, as well as Mount Rainier in Washington. Surprisingly, Death Valley is not number one, just considering their name. Here's our first Alaska. The Grand Canyon is actually pretty high up here. Big Bend, as well as the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. There's another Alaska in the 10th place spot. Yellowstone, only in 9th. I figured that'd be a little bit higher. Sequoia and Kings Canyons in California. You gotta watch those snakes. Michigan's Isle Royale. Alaska, and number one is actually Washington. I knew Alaska was gonna be bad. This might just be because no one goes here. Only 40,000 visitors and 26 casualties, mostly because of bears. In fact, all of these Alaska ones, well, not all of them, but they all have bears as a problem. Clearly, a lot of people just fall here. So unsurprisingly, it is the most rural state that the US controls, Alaska. They also have some of the most beautiful national parks, though, at the same time. The G7's debt projections, we're talking these numbers all within the next 5 years. And of course, the US is by far number one. I mean, the US has the most debt now. It's not going to change in 5 years. Crazy, that's at 34 trillion. This is actually part of the reason why I've seen inflation is important, because the only way they're going to be able to pay $34 trillion in debt is if, like, you know, $1 is like having $1 million in the future. Like, that's the only way we have a chance of even catching up. Pretty weird and messed up. But then we also have the UK and Italy, France falling pretty close behind, Japan, which is in a pretty bad situation, but they're not in the worst out of all the G7s. In fact, they're projected to go down a bit in their debt. Actually, I don't think this is going down, it's just not going as up percentage-wise. Germany and Canada are a little bit of the same. Yeah, because we're talking the gross debt out of percentage of GDP. The US is just going to keep racking this in. We don't even care, baby. Can we just talk about the fact that Germany is the only G7 country that at the moment has less debt than GDP? That's a little bit sad. I will admit the chart is a little bit difficult to read. The most popular sodas by state. I'm really just pointing this out because in the South, they literally just call all soda Coke. So yes, a waiter could say, what do you want to drink? Someone from the South says a Coke. And then the waiter responds, what kind? So yes, the South better love their Coca-Cola. But the love for Coke goes all the way to California and Las Vegas and Nevada. Somehow Mountain Dew has stopped the Coke empire in Oregon, cutting them off. There's like a Coke enclave here. I'm just more impressed with the states that don't pick Coke. There's still a lot of Pepsi places. I've actually been hearing Pepsi's been going down, and that is because Dr. Pepper has cemented their second place position as the second most popular soda. They all still have a long way to go before hitting Coke, though. The love for Dr. Pepper's coming out of Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Mountain Dew is gaming fuel, right? So these are all the gamer states. Is there a connection to just like rural forest coldness and Mountain Dew? Like what? Oh, I guess it does say mountain in the title. Surprisingly, Delaware, one of the only outliers as Crush. How? Crush? I don't drink Crush. I'm down. I feel like my favorite soda is Sprite, but it's not to be seen on here. I mean, 7-Up too. Ew, I'll take the crab juice. Would love to have seen this chart over time, year to year, because I bet you it does change a lot. Maybe not Coke. Coke's cemented forever. U.S. housing prices has surpassed the Eurozone by 60%. That is if we start from the year 2010. Obviously, in 2008, there was the great financial crisis. Crazy that right before that, U.S. housing prices were surging, and then, well, this happened. I wonder if that is going to happen here too. Is that going to be a pattern? Crazy that it mostly stayed about the same until like the year, 2000 something. However, the EU has always been slightly behind, which is nice. I mean, I want to have a cheaper house. The pandemic really saw housing prices explode. Now here we are today, and to be honest, it doesn't look like it's just going to go down. I know everyone's predicting it's just going to magically go down. All my research into it is just like, no, we're not even building enough houses in the first place. The Euro 24 squad value, so which group and the countries involved in those groups have the biggest markets. This is specifically to determine the European Championship of soccer or football. The country of Georgia also making their debut. It's happening in Germany this year, and then here are the countries that have qualified and the others that have not. I love seeing the way different sports formulate how they run championships and tournaments and things like that. As you can see, the Western Europe squad has quite a lot of market share. The biggest coming out of England at 1.5 billion, but not too far behind them we have France and then Spain and the Netherlands. Look at Portugal go. Just Portugal alone with 1 billion. That's impressive for Portugal being a pretty small country. And here's Belgium. Then here's the host nation, Germany in Central Europe. Dang, Czechia not with that much. Austria and Switzerland, trying. They're relatively smaller countries, but trying their best to pull in a high market value. Northern Europe is just Denmark and Scotland, but that's impressive. Only 2 teams there. Eastern Europe, there's Croatia and Serbia, Georgia, Ukraine made it. Finally, Southern Europe is just Turkey and Italy. Of course, Italy likes their soccer, 700 million. So who's going to win? Would have been really interesting to have the teams grouped by group instead of an arbitrary location grouping. Oh, I was going to say, so those weren't divided by some organization in like a FIFA or something. That would be crazy, I was going to say. In which sea-based nation would you want to live if Europe was divided by its major watersheds? So watershed is a drainage basin in an area of land where all flowing surface water converges to a single point. So all this stuff is draining out eventually to the Black Sea. Meanwhile, this part of Europe drains to the Mediterranean. Over here, just the Atlantic Ocean. Then we have the North Sea, which is a lot of Germany and the lowlands. Baltic Sea is getting a real nice, they're just pulling from so many different sources. Poor Norwegian Sea, they can't be getting that much. And then of course, there's also the Caspian Sea way out over here. I think to answer this person's question, it's got to gotta be probably the North Sea. Be a pretty strong nation. I mean, they get a lot of Switzerland, a really big part of economic Germany, the lowlands, and then even London. It is dividing up the British Isles, but yeah. I guess the watershed that gets all the Atlantic Ocean is also a pretty good nation. I'm surprised there's not a whole lot of drainage that happens into the Mediterranean directly, although the Adriatic Sea is basically the Mediterranean too, because all this kind of stuff is, but yeah, I'm picking that North Sea Empire here. They are also getting Norway and parts of Denmark. North Sea works for me, but with Atlantic, you get fabulous wine, the West Country, especially Devon, Cornwall, Wales, Ireland, half of Spain. Lovely mixture of food and booze. You could probably make this into a mod and turn it into a game. See who would win out. To my patrons this month, thank you. Lucas, the Canadian Goose from Avoca. ZaneyBoi, Sarsath. I cannot sleep without douche. Amateur Archaeology. aPhatNarwhal. Connor, DaBeautiful-MEGAN-Underwood. Fredrik Tibblin, KansasWasMentioned. KingBearHaze. Lucas, Prentice. LuxembourgLover.
Sebby, if you hear this,
and
I
the
love you.
Tambre 760.